Welcome to Salisbury University on the Air, a program highlighting the activities and the people of the campus. My name is Susan Purnell. When Dr. Paul Pfieffer first joined SU's theater faculty in 1980, the campus was home to just over 3,000 students, less than half of today's enrollment. Endowed schools and skyline-changing buildings were a far-off promise, if anyone had even thought of them at all. In fact, Salisbury State College, as it was known at that time, was still 2 decades away from becoming Salisbury University. When Dr. Pfieffer retires at the end of this academic year, he will have served SU and its students for 37 years. But he has one final production coming to the SU stage this semester, and a few other surprises left as well. I'm happy to have him as my guest one last time on SU on the Air. So welcome again, Paul.
Thank you.
Awfully great to see you.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry to say this might be your last time here, and that's sad, but lots of good things to talk about today.
Yes.
So let's go back in time a little bit. I understand you were a student here at the university.
Yes, I have. I calculated yesterday, I have been involved in SU theater for 45 years.
Oh, gosh. And then after that, did you go on and study somewhere else and come back?
No, I graduated in 75, and I was still in the area and still participating in shows here and there. And also, when I had a teaching job in Delaware, and then when Lee died, I was hired with all new faculty, all new theater faculty. So that's when I got started.
So did you actually then work with people who had been your teachers?
Yeah.
You did?
That was a little weird for a while.
I bet.
Yeah. And some of those people that I had as teachers have only recently retired, so we've all kind of grayed together. But yeah, it was a little weird at first, but I had great teachers. I had great respect for them.
Well, I interviewed Jane Kreiness, who is now the curator of the NAB Museum, and she was telling me about an exhibit that they have there, and I think it's called, I'm going to have to read this, The Stage is Set, Leland Starnes and the SU Theater, focusing on the theater program, actually probably when you were there as a student, and so he was your teacher, is that right?
Yes.
What was it like?
It was fantastic.
He's as good as his reputation.
Yeah. He was, I remember when he first came, he introduced us to a whole different kind of, a whole different level. And no one ever felt like they were in a school play. Does that make sense?
And so he just raised the bar at SU.
Yeah. And he came to rehearsal with everything mapped out. Every little nuance was already thought through, already planned out, and it was a bit maybe dictatorial in a way, but that's the older style, which was fine, and it worked, and it didn't take long before everybody realized, hey, we're part of something really amazing, so do whatever he says because it's going to turn out really well.
Yeah, I've had directors like that when I during the process think, oh my goodness, can I have no leeway at all? But they're usually right.
Yeah.
When you're a student, you need to be learning.
Trust the vision.
Absolutely. Yeah. What would you say are some of the things that he taught you or advice that he gave you?
Well, directly, he asked me on one time, and actually this little anecdote is part of that exhibit. He asked me one time what I wanted to do with myself, and I said, I want to do what you do. And he said, well, then you better go out there and get some letters after your name.
Good advice.
Yeah. And I did. I mean, I had the weird challenge of doing my graduate work while I was already employed in the job I was getting the degree to qualify for. So,
oh my goodness.
Yeah. That was okay. But it was tough.
I majored in music in college, and I remember freshman year, my teacher said to me, don't do it. I wanted to be on Broadway. That was, as a kid, that's what I always wanted to do. He said, don't do it unless you die if you didn't. So I didn't do it.
Yeah.
I'm still here. So, you really do listen to your teachers, and I think that was kind of a rude awakening, but the right awakening for
Yeah.
me
I've
at the
had
time.
similar conversations with students over the years, and most of the time, uh, well, the ones I remember most are the ones that it's arguing the other way of,
Tell them to go
no,
for it.
why are you settling for this when you could do this, you know? And well, I remember one time with when Jennifer Hope Wills was here, and we met in my office one day, and I asked her what she wanted to do because she was getting ready to graduate, and she said, well, I'm going to go and teach music in elementary school. I said, what? I said, what do you want to do? She said, well, I think I should go and do, no, what do you want to do? I kept hammering away, what do you want? And finally she said, I want to do professional theater. I said, well, then do it.
Do it. And thank God she did.
Yeah, I said,
She's
don't hide your light
amazing.
under a bushel.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When
Oh,
she
she's
came
a
back
delight.
last year
Yeah.
and sang with the orchestra,
Yeah, oh, that was
it was an
wonderful.
incredible experience. It really, really was.
Yeah.
So what are some of the, let's go back again. What are some of the productions that you were in yourself as a student here that you liked, that you were very proud of?
Oh. My favorite was, I wasn't actually a student, I had already graduated, but I was involved, was The Country Wife. And I loved that. It was the first time I was ever in something that I thought, yeah, I could see doing this for 8 shows a week for 18-month contract. Yeah, because it was just so much fun. And that was why I chose to do it this
Here.
season, was because I wanted to bring that joy, because that show is so much fun.
And did you feel that your students felt the same way?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and of course I told them that story.
Yes.
But maybe they
So they
felt
had to.
obligated to say, oh yes, I agree. You know?
Right, exactly. You're the professor. Now, when you came on board as a professor here, what was your first production? Do you remember that?
Well, when I first started, I was doing all the tech. I wasn't directing. So I didn't direct until 83. I started in 80. I directed the first show in 83, and that was The Boyfriend, which is a very fun musical. I really love that show.
And that's a great
deal of fun.
show.
Yeah.
Now, the theater program is called the Bobby Byron Theater Program, and I know you were its first director. Tell us a little bit about Bobby Byron and why the theater program is named in her honor.
Sure. She was a lovely, lovely lady, and she had no family, and all of her friends had money, so they didn't need it, you know. And she was trying to figure out, what am I going to do with my legacy, you know. And Emily Robinson, bless her heart, guided her to us, and she had come to our shows. She really she liked my work. She told me that, and so she would come to see what I did and all that. So, and I had met her, and we got along really well. And part of her will then stipulated that we have this endowment. So that was extremely generous. And after a few years, it started to pay back. And at the time, that money more than doubled our production budget.
I never met her,
Yeah.
but Kim Nashe, who was with the foundation at the time, came to me and said, will you help sell her jewelry? It's going to go to the theater program.
Okay.
And so we sold for years. She had a lot of jewelry. And we sold her jewelry, and then as each piece, each piece was sold, I sent a check to the foundation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So we did that. So I was really proud to do that. She had, what was really sad to me, though, she had this charm bracelet with all the places she'd been in the world, little souvenir gold charms. And, you know, no one's going to buy somebody else's charm bracelet because it's their experiences.
Yeah.
So we actually had to melt that down for the gold value. And I thought,
that's a shame.
oh, you know, I wish somebody in that she did have family for that. But she certainly left a wonderful legacy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It changed our lives and what we were able to do.
And I hope she knows that.
Yeah.
That's great. Any other highlights of your career here that you want to talk about?
I took over running the theater program in '89 and ran it all the way up till just this year. So I'm in transitional leave, so that meant someone else had to take over. And Robert Smith is now the artistic director and co-chair. And I feel like, well, my model when I took on was Churchill. I greatly admire Churchill. So I have his picture in my office. And that sounds grandiose, but it's just, I thought, as the leader, you know, and the lessons of leadership, and I took a lot of my leadership lessons also from Shakespeare, Henry V.
Mm-hmm.
So I always made a point, for example, of going downstairs on my way through the building on my way out every day to check and see how things are going and talk to people and all that. Everybody knew who I was, etc. Touch of Harry in the night, you know. And I think that made a big difference because when people know, like Bellavance was excellent at that, and that's something I learned from him, was he and Liz were both very gracious about talking to the little people, you know, talking to the people that are actually making things happen.
Right.
And getting to know them and calling them by name and you know, that kind of stuff. And I think that's a very important thing for anybody in a leadership position to do. I think we have that.
I agree. I agree
Janet
with that.
does that.
I
you
think
know.
Janet's very
Yeah,
good at
she's
it too.
wonderful.
She's
Yeah.
terrific at giving
Yeah.
people accolades for what
Yeah.
they do
Yeah.
in every aspect
Yeah.
of the university. And I think
Yeah.
that's really important.
It
And
is important. It's
I
important
think that your
especially with
students
students.
feel that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
The other thing I did was my mandatory reading upon taking over as the theater, and again as taking over as the chair, was to read Machiavelli.
To know not what, to know
Yeah,
what not to
just
do.
to know how some games are played.
That's
you
right.
know.
In any environment, lots of games
Yeah.
are played.
Well, sometimes you have
Just
to
have
be
to-
a bulldog, you know.
Well, yeah. You
Yeah.
could be a nice bulldog, though. You know, there are nice bulldogs. So we have one important thing that we want to talk about today to let everybody out there know about that's coming up. Your final production is Cabaret.
Right. Right.
So let's talk a little bit about Cabaret.
Okay. Our season this year was based on looking back and revisiting things that we enjoyed or whatever, which was why I did The Country Wife, and Robert did Clyburn Park because he had done Raisin in the Sun. And so I had done Cabaret 20 years ago, and my wife, present wife, played Sally Bowles then.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So she did the choreography for this production.
Oh, did she?
Yeah, and she studied under Bob Fosse, so that was, you know.
That's
but,
amazing.
yeah, but this production is very different. It's very different from the one we did 20 years ago, as it should be. But it is, it's not even the same script, really, because we used the original back then. And in the meantime, it's been rewritten, revised a couple of times. And so we're doing the script that was from the 98 revival, which is a lot more open about sexuality and the sort of decadence that made that club scene at that point in time. And, you know, it addresses things that are actually quite out there in the book, in the stories. But in the 1966 production or whatever, they could only take that so far.
Right.
So there are a lot of things that are
More adult.
more unfettered.
So I think what you're telling
Yeah.
me is it really isn't appropriate for your little
Yeah.
children.
No.
This is an adult
Yeah.
play
It is.
/
Very.
musical.
Yeah.
In that small, wonderful, intimate
Yeah.
setting of the Bobby Byron Theater.
Yeah.
So how many does that house?
Right now, the seating is only 123.
Okay, so not a lot. And how
Yeah.
many nights are you going to have?
We have Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 2 weekends, so 8 performances.
Oh, so 8 That's great.
Yeah.
So that should allow
And
all
it-
of us who
it will
have
go
to see it,
quickly.
including myself.
Yeah.
You know, I have a question for you. Why don't they have cabarets anymore?
That's
You
a
know?
good question.
I just
Yeah.
came up with it. I'm thinking, I love that movie. I've seen the movie, the play, and the whole idea of a cabaret
Yeah.
is something you just don't see.
Yeah.
Maybe in Vegas,
Yeah.
but certainly.
Yeah, they're too grand now.
Yeah.
They're not the intimate little.
No.
Yeah.
No, you just rarely see a place where you can
Yeah.
see superb talent
Yeah.
singing and dancing
Yeah.
in a small environment.
Yeah. I
So
always thought
that's
it
what
would be-
this is going to be.
Yeah. I always thought it would be fun to run a speakeasy.
Yeah.
A club that posed as a speakeasy, where you had to go through and walk through a coffin or something, that kind of stuff.
So I know it's 2 weekends. Tell me the exact dates so that people can get their tickets now.
Okay. We open on the 30th of March, and it plays Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the 2nd, and then reopen again the following Thursday on the 6th,
Okay.
and closes Sunday the 9th.
Another 4 days. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
I mean, you can call,
SU
yeah.
website and purchase a
Yeah.
ticket. Very
and
good.
that would be preferable, simply because you know you have your ticket.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
because it's
the
gonna
box
go.
office isn't always open too.
And the second weekend is always more popular, so it's once word of mouth spreads. So I
And
would
it
advise
will.
anybody to jump
it
on it
will.
as fast as you can, because
Yeah.
it's going to go.
You know, it took place, cabaret, in the late 20s, early 30s. Why do you think the themes are still relevant today?
Well, aside from the obvious, everyone making parallels between what was going on in Germany in that period and what's going on in our country now after the election and all that, that's not why I wanted to do the play. To me, in the end, Cliff says, I was dancing with Sally Bowles and we were fast asleep. And I think that's the thing, is that you must be watchful. You have to be attentive. And it isn't about necessarily politically attentive as much as it's just attentive to what's going on around your world.
Yeah.
And where do you fit into it? And not to find yourself in some form of conformity. And that doesn't mean everybody has a free license to do whatever they like. It just means don't feel, like Quentin Crisp said, never take as your object in life to be somebody's equal. Why would we want to be all the same?
Right. As my mom used to say, don't be a sheep, Susan.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And this is basically what got those people in that predicament, was because they were so self-absorbed that they were not paying attention to the currents that were going on outside.
And
so,
I think you're right. There is some parallel to today, and a lot of us have had our head in the sand while things are erupting around us, and it's good to be wary.
Yeah.
You know, you can be proud and also be wary. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff going on.
Or to at least just be aware.
Oh, be aware. Okay. Well, so you're right. It's
Pay
a theme
attention.
that never grows old. That's
No.
right.
No, there will always be a time for production of this show.
Right. So after that, you have one more hurrah.
Right.
And I understand it's called Apology for the Life of an Actor.
Right.
And tell me about that.
Okay. That was part of my dissertation. I wanted to do research in performance of restoration and 18th century plays. And so my project was to write a one-man show that, in other words, demonstrates all of that. And so I found this character that I empathized with a great deal, because he was an actor-manager in the early 18th century, and he had worked his way up and studied with the greats and all this kind of stuff. Well, that was before people went to school for acting. That was just, watch what they do and do what they do, but he was very seriously criticized through his career, and most of it was probably professional jealousy, but I think he was also a bit obnoxious about it. And so I used him, and the premise is he is about to do his last performance in the role that made him famous. And in those days, nobody outgrew a role. You didn't get too old to play Juliet or whatever. You just continued it through your whole life. And So
Really?
Yeah.
Where are thou?
Well, because people weren't coming, they weren't looking at it in the sense of realism that we would expect now. They were looking at the skill of that polished actor who's been doing this role for years and years and years. And then the rival company would send somebody to study your performance and then copy it, and then everybody would fly across town to go see how well do you copy that person's performance.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
So it was a totally different kind of
Yeah.
expectation. But he was he had traveled. He knew Handel. I mean, you know, there are all kinds of people that it was in the circle, and so anyway, the premise is that the audience have come backstage to visit him in the dressing room, as was the custom. You could pay a little extra money to the stage manager and be allowed to come backstage. Most people did that because they were interested in the actresses. But anyway, he's then in a position where now he has to entertain everybody while he gets ready for the performance. And then, so he talks about his career and all that kind of stuff, and then has to go on stage for the performance. So the intermission is the performance, and then says, "Come back to me afterwards, and I'll make up to you."
So
and
it's a one-man show.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow,
Yeah, 2
acts.
hours?
Yeah, it's 2 acts. It's a
Golly.
Yeah.
I just don't know how you
It's
memorize all
grueling.
that. I can't memorize the questions they ask you. Whew, that's great.
Yeah.
But you've done it before?
I have.
Okay.
Yeah, and
So some comes back to you, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
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 Wow. Now, you're performing this for a reason. I think the price is a little higher this time for this
Yeah.
performance. Explain that to us.
Okay. There's actually 2 performances. The one on Friday, May 19th, is a freebie, because I wanted to make sure that the students and the SU people, the community, would have an opportunity to see this, because it was a fundraiser. Certain people would be automatically disqualified. They wouldn't be able to come, and I didn't want that to happen. So I'm doing it for them first. The second performance is on Saturday, and that's the gala, and it's more expensive because it goes to building a fund, which is in my name, which I'm very flattered about, which will be for to assist in the production needs, especially of classical theater, because sometimes those kind of plays, there's always something like weapons or something like that that's an odd expense that we have to find the money for. And so that's what this is about, so that there's not a detriment in doing these kind of plays, because there's a chunk of money that the theater faculty will elect what to do with. And that's what my goal.
Like as you said earlier, if you need 20 wigs, you can go get them now.
Well, right,
hopefully.
right.
Yeah.
Because it is, to do it right, it has to have the right materials.
And what's the price of admission on that one?
$50.
$50.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's a, it's a tax.
When you
thing
think of
and
what a
all that.
Broadway play costs, it sounds like the deal of the century. Right. So after that, you retire.
Yeah.
And what are your plans?
Well, I had written the play about the Scottish witch trials, which was another highlight, favorite production. I wrote it, and I'm still trying to get that out there. I have a couple leads on maybe developing it for television, but I want to do a lot more research and a lot more writing, and I'd like to freelance.
So you'll stay within your realm. You just
involved.
won't have a day-to-day obligation.
I'm not going to put on white shoes and go play golf. And I'm still. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to leave while I was still young enough to be able to do all that kind of thing and feel vital. You know what I mean? Because it does take an awful lot of energy being involved in that.
Absolutely. Well, I think 37 years in any job
Yeah.
is, really amazing. You've given so much to this college and our community. And I say bravo for everything that you've done, and thank you.
Thank you. I've
And
had a
best of
good
luck.
run.
Yeah, my father said that. I've had a good run, and that's a great thing that you can say at the end of a long career like this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Good luck. And now here's a look at cabaret and other activities scheduled on the campus in April. I'd like to thank my guest, Dr. Paul Pfieffer of SU's Music, Theater, and Dance Department. I'm Susan Purnell, and this has been Salisbury University on the Air. Thank you for watching.